Ladies and gentlemen, less than a week away to the NFL draft, and we're here to talk tackles coming up on the Draft Dodgers. We are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's your friend Dom C. here for a special episode of the Draft Dodgers. Riding solo today, but not really solo. I got some special guests here to talk about the tackle class. Maybe one of the best, at least towards the top of the class, since I've been involved in this scouting game, that I've seen in a while. So, when I talked about this episode, I knew there was two guys that I wanted to bring on, and hey, here we are, a couple days from the draft, and I got to work. I got the magic going. I got both of these guys, all three of us, to talk tackles today. So let me start with the familiar face to all you Jets fans, guys. The master of the film, owner of Jets Factor, host of Blewett's Blitz himself, arguer with Leger Doozable, Joe Blewett. Joe, go ahead.
I think I'm also an arguer with Damian Woody at this point, who completely backtrack on wanting Carter Warren as a backup. But nonetheless, I appreciate the invite for sure, Dom.
Listen, long time coming, man. I'm happy you make the time, and this is the perfect opportunity, dude. We got a little time to BS about this offensive tackle class, and like I said, backstage, when I wanted to talk about this and when I wanted to get in the weeds with some of this guys, you were the first guy that I thought about. So I appreciate you coming on. And we do have another special guest here. When I got involved, a couple years back in kind of doing some of this NFL draft scouting stuff, I got linked up with our next co-host, our next guest here down in Mobile, and there's probably no other man that there's very few people that that I trust when they tell me something, like that, the work is done and it's thorough. And it's, pretty spot on. There's few guys that I trust, more so than my own eyes. Our next guest, Kyron Samuels, is one of them. Kyron is the writer and analyst for the Pulling Guard, former all-conference offensive lineman at Jacksonville State. Kyron, my dude, long time, brother.
Man, happy to be back and do some work with you, man. So it's good to see you, and always happy to talk about some offensive linemen.
That's right. And man, listen, the top of this class is, like I said, I meant what I said. Like, it's a lot deeper at the top than it has been over the past couple of years. There's been a couple guys here and there, but pick or choose. There's probably 6 or 7 guys, maybe even more, that are going to go in this first round. And depending on who you talk to, who's 1 through 8 can kind of vary. So to me, that shows that there's a lot of versatility, a lot of depth in this class. And you two especially. Like I said, I chop it up with you guys. I follow you guys. I listen to what you guys say. I believe the work that you do. I believe your eyes. And I think it's interesting that the three of us are here because we kind of all see this class a little bit different. So I think that's pretty cool. Just overall, Kai, without delving too deep into the players themselves, what do you think about this class? What do you think about the first round talent in this offensive tackle class?
Oh, I mean, for me, it's the best class I can ever remember. Just if you talk about, like you just said, from 1 through 8, I think the consensus number 1 guy is probably Joe Alt, right? And there's a very good reason for that. He's the safe pick, in my opinion. If I was a GM, safest guy, right? Put him on the field, you're going to get solid play out of him. I believe that. But from 2 to 10, there's a ton of talent there. There's like 7 or 8 guys that I believe have Pro Bowl potential. I'm not saying they'll all be Pro Bowlers, but have Pro Bowl potential. And I can't remember saying that in any other draft.
Yeah. And Joe, I know you've, for X Factor, you delve really hard into the top of this tackle class. So as a whole, as much, as much in the weeds as you got for the class, what is your overall views?
Yeah, I think it's a really good class, and you can get a lot of versatility, whether it be more like a power guy with JC Latham. If you want a little bit more finesse, you can go with guys like Fashanu. There's guys who could play a bunch of offensive line positions in Fatano. There's guys who are a little bit more like power, interesting. Fuaga, can he play tackle? Can he survive there? Is he going to survive in that guard? Should he be moved there in his best case scenario? So it's like a versatile group with a lot of different skill sets. Alt is an interesting one. I believe you said Kai is from Bama, and he likes Bama guys. So actually, Latham is my OT1 over Alt, and that's really just because of the ceiling. And I agree with Kai in saying that Alt probably is a safe player. I just think with Alt, his ceiling is a little bit limited, as where guys like Latham, if he reaches his ceiling, like that guy could be an absolute monster. So, and with Alt too, I think he's 6'8", 6'9". Yeah. And part of that comes where hey, at a certain point, being so tall hurts you. We all know it's a leverage game, and when you can't get your hips under another guy's hips, it could, you could struggle versus NFL power. And I saw that a little bit with Alt. I'm not saying I'm completely down on him. He's not tackle 6. I'm not that crazy. He is tackle 2 for me. But it's a really interesting class in terms of, again, just versatility, and there's a lot of different flavors of guys.
Yeah. Now, before we get into Latham, because I do want to touch on him, he's been my favorite of this whole draft cycle, one of the favorites. I graded him out. Alt graded out better than Latham for me, not by much. I both had, they're both top 10 guys in my class overall. And Kai, I know that I haven't checked on it recently. I know probably earlier, right around Senior Bowl, or maybe right after Senior Bowl, you kind of put out your top 5 tackles. I believe you had Olu number 1 at that point. Is he still your number 1 tackle?
Oh yeah, correct. Olu is still my number 1. Latham's actually my number 2. Alt's my number 3. Mims is my number 4, and then Troy from Washington is my number 5. But it's funny, I was listening to you talk, Joe, and it was I agree with everything you said about Latham in terms of his prospect. He's going to be a guy that if he maxes out his potential, we're talking about multiple time All-Pro here. He's the guy that I believe has that ceiling. So as much as I think Alt is the safe pick, if I'm a GM, if I'm a head coach, and I need a guy that's going to be a surefire pick. I need a guy that's going to be a guy that we can rely on from day one and don't have to think about the prospect aspect of it. That'll probably be the guy that I take, right? I think I comp him to a guy like Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews has never been a Pro Bowler, right? But he's been 10-year starter, doesn't miss a game, plus starter. I mean, it's hard to find guys as good as Jake Matthews in the NFL, as consistent as he is. And I think Alt, even though they're different a little bit frame-wise, Alt's a little bit taller, lankier. And it's interesting. I wanted to ask you, I'm sorry to kind of ask my own question here, Don, but I wanted to know here, when I watched Joe Alt, I agree with everything you said about him struggling a little bit against power and just a little bit of the leverage battle, but I find that he's much better of a run blocker than he gets credit for, and not quite as good as a pass blocker as he gets credit for.
Yeah, Joe, I'll let you answer that. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah. I think Alt's good, technique wise in the run game. He's really good in terms of climbing to the second level, staying on that double team block, having patience, staying square to the second level, popping off to the linebacker, whatever it is with good timing. I don't think he always digs guys out, just because of how high his hips are. But in terms of technique wise, if he's on, a combo block into the second level, he's good. Obviously open field. He has really good open field speed. My problem with Alt comes again, I rather have the guy who's 6'5" with 34-inch arms than the guy who's 6'9" with 34-inch arms, again, because a lot of people, and at least in my opinion, a lot of people, when they talk about leverage, always think about helmet. It's really the hips. You need to get your hips underneath of a guy. And Alt just struggles with that in my opinion. But even in the pass game too, one of my problems with Alt, I think he plays with good length. Initially you want to play with that length, but for tackles, you want to keep active feet, and you want to actually, and you guys know this, you want to get a guy close to you. You want to get you want to get that latch in. You want to get him nice and tight to you and control him. I feel like Alt plays way too long. At first, length is a great thing, but then when he's controlling a guy and he's out like this, and obviously you don't have as much control like that, and then he starts to get off balance a little bit. I've seen him get bull rushed a few times, so I think he's very safe in terms of like Kai said, hey, if you need a guy who's going to come in right now, be a decent to solid tackle in his first year, and just be a safe guy for the rest of his career, fine. But with Latham, it's a thing where I and Kai, I'm sure you know what it is. You know laziness out there. Dom, you know laziness out there. He got one bad play against Michigan, and now he's a bad player. When in reality, the rest of that game was actually it was a really good game from Latham, minus one play. And there was a play, there was an overload blitz to his side. There was 2 or 3 guys. They didn't pass it off correctly. And there was a sack there. Yeah, exactly. But that's
my bad.
No, yeah, that's fine. But at that point too, like, what's the call? Does he know the call? Was it properly communicated? It's like we can't blame that necessarily just on him. It's like a notch in the belt. Like, okay, something to consider. Did he screw up? We don't know, but it's a notch to consider. We see that all the time. There was one bad play in that Michigan game, and then people, you know what it is, Dom. People see Becton big. Yep. Latham big, Becton bad, Latham bad. Like, that's seriously the line of thinking, and it's crazy because Latham's 30 less pounds, and people talk about Latham and it's, oh, he doesn't have lateral movement, he can't move well. It's like, yeah, he's not going to move as well as a guy who's 310 pounds, but for 340 he moves well. I think the problem with Latham getting his face crossed, it's not necessarily his feet. It's more like you'll see some oversets and you'll see like a little bit of heel clickiness like in that contact window, but it's not a lack of movement thing with Latham for me. Like, he has plenty of movement skills considering his size. And then we talk about Latham, and I think he's had a lot of penalties, but I think it's 6 holding calls over the last 2 years, and a part of that was, okay, when you overset, you're going to hold a time or two. But I saw at least a holding a call or two where he just tries to dominate guys in the second level, and after the whistle, he might be a little bit off balance because that linebacker, got some lateral movement on him, and instead of just letting the guy go, he's kind of like off kilter trying to drag a guy to the ground. I rather coach out aggressive than coach in aggressiveness. Yep. So I like Latham a lot more than other people. I think he's over or he's underrated legitimately because of one play.
Yeah, so Latham, I mean, I've been a fan of his for this entire cycle. Really, the 22 game versus Tennessee really kind of opened my eyes to him. And I remember talking to Kai early in September. I reached out, and I said, Kai, do you think he can last that tackle? So here's my thing with Latham. There's been nobody that I've laid my eyes on in the past couple cycles that has the anchor that he has, that has the grip strength and the latch that he has. He gets his hands on you, it's game over. It is game over. Now, you see, I think he's good with his, I think he stays in balance, keeps his shoulders square in his passes, but he hasn't been asked to really set deep vertically, like, that all, and that's a really a result of the wonky offense, that Alabama ran. He just hasn't done it. So everyone, and again, Joe, I appreciate you bringing that up again, doing the Jet stuff. Everyone correlates big tackle to Mekhi Becton. And to me, I don't think they, even remotely resemble each other play skill wise. But, listen, I haven't seen a lot of reps where you get, wide 9 guy that gets on Latham when Latham's asked to set deep vertically. So could he do it? I think he can. Have I seen a lot of it? No, I haven't. So, if there's any question about that, I think that's the big thing with Latham. Like, I think he's going to be able to come in and dominate in the run game. I think he can move over to the left tackle. Like, I think I think his footwork is phenomenal, and the strength and all that stuff. I think his footwork is good enough to hang on the left side. Kai, I'll throw it to you about Latham on that side. Do you think talk to me about the Alabama offense, because you're going to be a lot more in tune to that, and those questions that some people are saying that he can't, which I don't know. I think they pull it out of their ass, to be honest with you. Oh, Latham gets beat by speed. And I say to them, when? Show me. Like, show me.
I saw so much of that. I saw so much of that. I went and made a cut up of myself of him doing, if not full vertical sets, at least 45-degree deep sets where he's having to get out and extend a little bit and protect the inside. A lot of people say he gets beat with speed, but in my experience, speed hurts more to the inside when you have guys like Latham that are a little bit bigger, and they're really good athletes, but they're not phenomenal athletes, and they tend to overset a little bit. Like you said, the speed hurts them more getting beat across their face. I didn't see any of that with J.C. Latham. I have a bunch of clips. I made a little cut up of them doing those sets. But I think Latham in that offense was asked to shut off a side of the field. I mean, if you look at Alabama's offense over the course of the years, they've had 6-7 first-round draft picks at wide receiver. They haven't had that lately. They've been killing people running the football. So you're not going to get a bunch of wide nines. You can't have a wide nine against Alabama. They're just going to run the ball down your throat, right down the back of J.C. Latham and Jaden Roberts and Tyler Booker and those big guards. So you don't see a ton of that. And I think the way you tried to get Alabama and J.C. Latham was with edge games off the edge. A lot of edge pressure, a lot of stuff like you saw against Michigan in the end of the second quarter. And I think people sometimes confuse great scheme with poor play. No, they were playing some really good coaches who had some very talented players, and they gave some confusing looks, and it confused Alabama up front. I mean, they weren't great all season, picking up stunts, picking up games, and I don't think that was on any individual, because you saw from the Tennessee game on, all the way to the Michigan game, they played phenomenally. Like they shut down Georgia. The Georgia performance, J.C. Latham, and pretty much all that offensive line in that Georgia game is as good of a performance as you can ask for from a prospect. So I think J.C., like we said, if he could fill out his potential, he has potential to be the most talented guy in this class. And I feel the same way about Amarius Mims. I know we might talk about him a little bit later, but those two guys, in my opinion, have the most freakish ability in this draft. And if those guys are able to fulfill their potential, I think they'll be all pro caliber players.
Yeah. So I don't think it's crazy here. And listen, I get beat up on this on social media, which is fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But I don't think it's crazy if the Chargers stick at their pick at 5, that Latham would be the choice. Like, to me, that's, that makes sense to me. What about you, Kai? What about you, Joe? I mean, you think Latham in the top 5 is outlandish?
No, well, I guess, yeah. Sorry, I'll go first. He's my tackle once. Like in my world, no.
Yeah,
like I would be completely fine with taking him, at 5 if I was the Chargers. Now to the NFL world or to the mock draft world, is that a surprise? I'm sure, but like there's so many crazy things that happen. Like remember, I always make this comparison because I just remember it specifically. Like Sean Wade, the corner from Ohio State, like that whole entire offseason, he was supposed to get drafted top 10. He fell to like the 5th round, whatever it was.
Yeah.
A couple of months ago, the flavor of the month was Fashanu, and now people are not even talking about Fashanu as an option for the Jets at 10. And then it was Fuaga; he was going to be the pick at 10. And then and now I believe the flavor is Fatanu. So it's just crazy that a lot of these opinions are. And I've said this before, and it makes me seem like an ass, but I'm fine with saying it. People build their opinions on like 5 minutes of highlight tapes and just parrot opinions of other people. So like it's just crazy on social media. And I've said it before that people are literally willing to like meet up and fist fight over prospects, and they didn't do any research into them. So It's wild. So for Latham, like I think the general NFL world on Twitter, like they would be shocked. But to me, like I would pick him at 5. I would pick him at 6 if I needed a tackle. And even that play at that last play at Michigan, like there's some people who talk about that play, and I don't know how you guys feel about it. Like, yeah, it wasn't a good play from Latham. It's also not easy to step down with that vacating guard and then take I don't know if it's a linebacker or a defensive end, like full steam into your chest and try to hold your ground. And the running back seemed to keep that run pretty shallow. Like he should have bounced it a little bit more to the left side there. So he kind of ran into the back of Latham, and it's like, oh, Latham got absolutely destroyed in that play. Like, no, it's not an easy position to have to step down for a vacating guard when you're on the 1 yard line against Michigan. Like, yeah, it was not a great play, but we shouldn't draft him because of that. Like, that is just absolutely outlandish to me, and it kind of highlights the shallowness of evaluations in today's Twitter world.
Yeah, and it was Braden McGregor who's going to be, he's going to play in the league himself, the defensive end there from Michigan. So, it's top end talent, like you said. The whole thing. I can't take the one play scouts or the single game scouts that run amok. But yeah, Kai, talk to me a little bit about where you project Latham and where you could see his ceiling, where you could see his floor when it comes to the draft. Obviously, we don't know who's going to take who's going to trade anywhere like that, but we'll finish up on Latham with this.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of what Joe just said about that play against Michigan too. It's like, if they just get a clean snap, we never talk about that play. The fact that Miller had to pick the snap off the ball and those extra second or two just to corral the ball and then try to find vision, we never talk about that play. And it's a gap hand is one of the most difficult things to do as a tackle, like you said, because you have two responsibilities. You have to protect the inside gap first, and you're responsible for whatever's coming off of the edge. So if something comes hot, you might be expecting it, and if you just get off kilter, it's not as simple as everybody makes it out to be. So I think people are making way too much of that play, but I wouldn't be surprised if Latham was in the top 10. I think the floor for a guy like Latham is 12. I don't know. The Broncos aren't going to draft a guy like Latham, but I mean, somebody could trade up. I just don't see that guy falling pretty much past the 12, 15 at the most. I would just be shocked if he falls past 15. But as far as the Chargers pick at 5, I wouldn't be shocked if they took him. I mean, it sounds like a hardball pick. He likes those guys. He likes road graders. He likes guys that move people off the ball. It's just a redundant pick, in my opinion. I don't think the Chargers should be drafting an alignment, period. I don't understand the logic from drafting a lineman. You have all-pro at left tackle and Rashawn Slater. You paid Trey Pipkins all that money last offseason. It's just, I don't know where they would put a tackle in that spot, and you're definitely not going to draft a guard there at 5. So I think that Latham's talent is top 10 worthy, and there's no question about that.
Yeah. So we'll transition, because I know Joe brought up Fashanu a little bit, and I know Kai, he's your number 1 on the board. I know Joe thinks differently. He's my 3, So I'm probably right in the middle of you guys. Listen, I think the guys, all the talent in the world, I'm looking at my notes here, and wide, low, passive hands. That's the first thing that I see in his film. So I'll dump this to you, Kai. Tell us why you're so high on Olufashinu.
He is like an amalgamation of everything I love about the modern offensive lineman. He's not your old school guy that is going to blow people off the ball, and he's not a Latham that's going to drive you 10 yards off the ball in the power run game. But he is the most easy, effortless blocker I've seen in a very long time at the college level. I think there's some kids in the next draft, Kelvin Banks and Will Campbell, that have some of that little bit of effortlessness about them as well. But I think he should have come out last year, and he would have been the OT1 last year for sure. I think he may have lost a little bit of money coming back this past season. But Olu is every bit of the athlete that you want on tape. I know some people weren't satisfied with his testing numbers, but to me, like that's like it's not even an icing on the cake; it's the cherry on top. Like if he had those great testing numbers at the combine, that's just a little bit of the cherry on top. I don't need to have that because I mean the film pretty much translates all over to the drills. I believe he ran 5.1 or 5 flat, plenty fast enough for me. I really don't care about stuff like that, but just the way he has his hand placement, he's very advanced. And I have to. It's funny you mentioned that wide, low hands. It's like I had to kind of untrain myself from thinking like that because I talked to a guy, Willie Anderson. He's played for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah.
They're teaching technique like that now, and I just had no idea that. I was always taught you want to keep your hands high, close to your chest, ready to strike. But apparently, defensive ends and edge rushers and linebackers are so smart and fast now. They don't want their hands so easily, erased and in position to be knocked away and for the counters because not everybody's good enough athletes to adjust to that after that. So I had to talk to him about that because I was like, I just don't understand the rationale. And he kind of explained it to me, and it made a little bit more sense. I'm still not a huge fan of it. Don't get me wrong. So I agree with you. It's still a little bit weird for me to get adjusted to that. But when you are an athlete like an Olu, it gives you the ability, if you have, the timing and the mental reps to adjust, counter the counter. A lot of guys, especially in modern defensive ends, they're not bull rushers and read and react guys. They want to throw a move. They want to do spins. They want to do club rips, chops. They want to do all these extravagant moves. And not having your hands there takes that away from them because they can't make their move until you make your move as an offensive lineman. So it's funny you mentioned that because I just have to untrain myself when I'm watching that as well. And he doesn't get beat very often because of that. I just don't see Olu give up many reps. I know a lot of people like to say that about Joe Alt, but I saw Joe Alt get bull rush more than I saw Olu get bull rush last 2 years. I saw Joe Alt struggle with the inside movement, protecting and anchoring and leverage than I ever saw Olu did. I think Olu is the most consistent of the entire draft. He just doesn't. He plays so smooth and effortless that I think it comes off sometimes as like lack of want to or lack of care. But I think he has some great functional strength. I don't see him get beat very much on the inside. He's not blowing people off the ball on the run game, but he's not getting driven back. He's giving you, at the very least, a solid stalemate. He understands leverage. I see him torque guys a lot. I see him position guys a lot and open up running lanes. So I like Olu from all of those aspects, and I think his game is going to translate extremely well over to the NFL. And he's another guy that has even more to go. I think if you get a coach that can get a little bit, and I think you're kind of either born with that dog or you're not. But if you can get a coach to kind of get to him, like establishing a little bit of that dominance early can help you for the rest of the game. I think Olu can even go up a notch or two in terms of the run game prowess. I think he's going to be a fantastic pass blocker. He'll be fine there, but he can go up a notch or two in the run game. And if he does that, I think he's the best guy in this draft.
Yeah.
Offensive line wise.
So you talked about him and the functional strength is, and I'm going to push back a little bit. I think that he definitely, probably needs a little bit more time. Like, I don't know if he's maxed. All right. He doesn't lack that sure, like people moving thing that some of these linemen have, that Fuaga has, that Latham has, where he's going to displace those guys. He also doesn't lack that finisher, that he doesn't have that finisher mentality. Like you talked about that dog, but I will say, like, you did watch him. I mean, I specifically watched Rutgers and I don't know why that game sticks in my head. It might be because I'm a Jersey boy. But very passive on the inside. That he got beat on the inside more often than I would like than I would like to see. And listen, could it be again? I just talked about single game scouting. I'm not saying that, but that's what sticks out. That's what sticks out in my mind.
How dare you, Dom? How dare you?
I know, but that's what sticks out in my mind is that man, like again, and I appreciate that low, outside hands is something that I'm not used to seeing. Now, the way you explained it makes a little bit more sense. But man, don't be so passive on that inside. If you're gonna keep your hands low and on the outside, you better strengthen up on the inside so you don't get beat across the face like he did against Joe Blow from Rutgers, who's gonna be playing in the USFL pretty soon. So Blewett, I'll give it to you, man, because I know you did a really good breakdown on Olu and up and down and so on and so forth. So let it rip, brother.
I can say I do take offense to the Joe Blow comment, just considering the last name. I'm just kidding. So with Fashanu, he's really close, teetering to me as tackle 2 over Alt in this one as well. So me and Kyle are actually relatively similar in the way we see these players. The one thing I will say that I not disagree with in the run game, I think I see a little bit more of him not being able to move guys, not rolling his hips, not getting under guys. You see his base getting a little bit narrow, then he's able to be moved and thrown off balance a little bit more than I like. And then something that you guys both brought up and Kai kind of like prefaced it, and then Dom, you kind of hit on a little bit more. My problem with both him and Alt to a certain extent was like when I watched those games versus Rutgers, when I watched the games versus lesser competition, I didn't see him dominating those guys. And like that's one of the things I look for, like on my checklist, is like, hey, lesser competition, did he dominate them? And I didn't see him dominating guys. And it's not saying that you have to dominate them to the ground or anything like that, but I didn't see any reps where I was like, oh yeah, like wow, he really owned this guy who was a much lesser player than he did. So it concerns me about going to the next level where the competition is going to be much higher than, again, some Joe Blow from Rutgers. What he's going to do. I'm not expecting any rookie to really outdo Max Crosby, but it's an example. Like Rutgers, the end, Max Crosby, so like, is he going to be able to move guys at the NFL level in the run game? I don't think he struggles with like power. I think it's more technique wise in the run game. So it's not a thing where in the run game I'm like, hey, he can't do it. I think he could do it. But that's more the negative of Olu. Now, in terms of the positive, like I'm okay with the hands. I think they're pretty patient. I would like to see him change up his punch a little bit more. He is more passive with that inside hand, and he tends to like throw it out there as like a feeler, and he really catches you with that outside hand, which I think is pretty advanced for that level to kind of like have more of like a feel hand. And like Tyron Smith does that a lot actually. When you watch him, but so I think he's the most well-rounded guy in pass pro. Like right now, one pass rep. Who are you taking? I'm probably taking Olu over even Alt or whoever else it may be. It's just more questions about the run game. Can he change up his sets a little bit more than he does in terms of how he punches guys? And then on top of that, like the lack of dominating lesser competition, it's not something that I could say like, hey, this is definitely a concern here, but it's just, again, another notch in the belt of like, hey, of the questions I have about the guy. I didn't see him dominate players like I wanted to. And I personally, it's just a personal thing. I like seeing guys with that nasty. Maybe I am that, 60-year-old offensive line coach at Harder or whatever, like Bob Willie, something like that. Like I like seeing guys get dominated to the ground because it's a mindset thing too. Like, and I say this a lot in a lot of like draft podcasts or whatever, like we have so much information that's not available to us about, these guys and interviews and medicals and how they act and stuff like that. But like, if you're not seeing a guy, have that nasty at the collegiate level, and I'm not saying this is older, this is just overall, if he does struggle at first, like, is he a little bit, again, really, really like extrapolating here. I'm not saying this is Olu, but like, is he going to be a little bit soft mentally where he gets beat up a couple times and it rolls into a larger, snowball to a boulder type of deal? You don't really know. So it's a little bit concerning the lack of domination, but again, he's really close to being my tackle 2. Right now, he's my tackle 3, and Alt is over him just because of the safeness of Alt. And I think he's a little bit more well-rounded in the run game. But I definitely like Olu as well.
Yeah.
And
so.
Oh, my bad, Don.
No, go.
It's just funny. It's funny you say that. It's just like I played that way, like just mean and nasty. I was a pulling guard myself, like so. I had to like kind of untrain myself to think like that about every guy because I agree with you 100%. That's what I like. I like to see guys knocking people all over the place. I like to see a guy on a double team get in that hip because everybody likes to hit up high on the shoulder, but the hip is where you're going to move guys. So I like to see a guy like Latham when he has that balance and that leverage and he gets in the hip with the flipper and he knocks guys 3 gaps over. I love seeing stuff like that. But, I think the difference between that mentality and a guy like Olu is the difference between Trent Williams and Andrew Whitworth. Like, everybody loves Trent. Trent's the guy. He has all the sexy accolades and all that. But Whitworth played for how many years and won the Super Bowl and was reliable. He never was a dominant run blocker. He was never really a dominant pass blocker. He just got the job done, right, every time. And I think that player is not just as valuable, but it's still extremely valuable. So I think it's a difference between like OT1 and OT3, like you're saying. But I still think overall, in terms of their prospect as a player, I had to like kind of untrain myself thinking like if he doesn't have that dog, that he can't be successful because, like I said, it's just the difference between like a Trent Williams and an Andrew Whitworth or, a Joe Thomas and then a Jake Matthews. It's just those are the little separators. But all of those guys are still extremely successful players. And I'm trying to keep that in mind now when I'm scouting and grading these guys like that.
Yeah, Dom, if I could respond to that, it's not a thing where I think like, hey, lacking that nasty at the collegiate level means you're going to be a bad NFL prospect. I don't think it correlates. It's just another like question where if you see the dominance and the power from a guy like Latham, like you're more comfortable with his mentality going into the NFL level, even though I guess technically it could work against you, right? Like if he's used to dominating guys, he goes to the NFL level, doesn't, then maybe he's more fragile mentally. So that's a really long form conversation I think we could have, but it's just a question I have. It's not something where, it's black or white. It's more gray. It's like, hey, will he respond well? Because I agree with you. Like finesse can be just as good as power and all that stuff. Like you don't have to be the nastiest player in the world. And even though I prefer that, you don't have to be a good tackle. It's just something that I ask a question about, that I don't have an answer to.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you there.
So I have, and this isn't a player comp, but if you remember a couple years back when Charles Cross came out of college, a lot of the same things people were questioning, like that you hear about Olu, were questioning about Charles Cross. Like, hey, you think he's going to be good. He mirrors well. You think he's going to be a good pass set, but you don't know if he's going to have enough to maintain in the run game or really affect the game that way. Charles Cross has transitioned pretty well. So listen, again, not comparing Olu to Charles Cross. They're but coming out as prospects, like a lot of the same stuff is getting talked about. I think Olu is a little bit more technically advanced than Charles Cross when he came out of college.
Yeah.
And listen, Charles Cross has kind of proven all the naysayers wrong and saying, he's not physical enough. He's not a finisher. He's not, can't move people. He's done it. And I'm sure Olu will as well. Listen, we're this is good because we're kind of getting in the weeds and really nitpicking guys that are really phenomenal football players. Let's call a spade a spade. These guys are all really good. So all right, listen, Latham. Here's the interesting one because me personally, I seem to be a little bit lower on Troy Fontenot than the majority. And again, I think it's Jet stuff here. He seems to be the flavor of the week, and everyone has fallen in love. A couple of guys, have praised him and so on and so forth. And now everyone's on the Fontenot, bandwagon. So I'll kick it to you, Joe. Give me Troy Fontenot in a nutshell for you.
Yeah. So, again, I'm always transparent about how much I watch guys. Fontenot was a guy I watched in passing while I was watching Odunze. So it's a review I did. It's relatively shallow. So I could be wrong. Again, I would want to go back and watch his entire season before I really put a stamp of my opinion on a player. In passing, I think that for me, at least, he played a little bit out of control. And when you put him on an island, I think he got over his toes a little bit. So he felt a little volatile to me in terms of how he plays. And then I did see him struggle versus power at times. Maybe that was more isolated on an island, like vertical set, like letting guys build up, and he has power. He has problems with that. It seemed like more so. Again, would want to watch full. But I see the fit at both, like, obviously he's athletic enough to play tackle, right? He has long enough arms. He has the foot speed. He has we like the aggression, all that stuff from him. But I get the guard talk as well because and this is something that I at least learned in the last few years of evaluating guys. Just because you're fast doesn't mean, or fast and more agile doesn't mean you succeed at guard as well. And it's something that, and again, this is no comparison to Fontenot at all, but Billy Turner, when I went back and watched Billy Turner for the Jets, really light guy gets dominated by power, right? So you're assuming dominated by power on the edge means dominated by power on the inside. Not necessarily true, because guys who can struggle with power on the edge, if they get their hands on you quicker on the inside, they don't. If you can't build up that speed, and that's almost what Tyron Smith does a lot of. Actually, he'll use hug techniques on guys a lot because he jumps on you so quick that he has that 6-7 yards, 8 yards of room to get bull rush. So if you bull rush from 3-4 yards, who cares? He anchors down after 3 yards. But with Fontenot, with Fontenot, It's or not Fatano. Who we were just talking about? No, Fashanu, Fatanu, Fuaga. Geez, for Fatanu, yeah, he felt like he played a little bit out of control for me. I saw him struggle a little bit versus power, and he felt like very, very hit or miss on the reps I watched. So, in terms of my very limited watching of him, again, probably I don't know. Let's say he played 1,000 snaps. I probably legitimately like really focused on him for like 200, 250 of them.
Okay.
But he feels like a boomer bust type of guy, at least at tackle. Now maybe now the benefit of him is like, hey, if he fails a tackle, play him at guard, and then maybe he doesn't struggle with that power at guard. How quick are his hands? I didn't watch his hands all the time. So like if you have quick hands, then go on the inside. Like, hey, getting that first contact inside can win you a lot of reps. So not thrilled at 10 at the moment. If we draft him at 10, I can go back and watch the other 800 reps and say, oh, I actually like this guy a little bit more than I thought I did, just like I did with Leaky Fotu when we signed him, Dom.
Yep.
So it wouldn't be a slam dunk pick for me at 10. I would like Fatano more so in a trade down, but again, relatively limited, snap watching of him.
Yeah, so it's funny you talked about quick hands because as I'm going through my scouting report for him, the first two things that I said is quick hands, quick feet.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. I think he's a mover. I've pegged him as a guard the whole time, and I know when he tested out in Mobile with 34.5-inch arms, all of a sudden he was, everyone's tackle 3 and so on and so forth. I have him as my 7. I have him as my tackle 7. And again, kind of like you said, I think he's out of control at times. Balance is a definite issue. He plays very narrow, very narrow stance. I like the way he moves, but at times it's like it's so hit or miss. Like sometimes you watch him get, just absolutely, like the shit kicked out of him, by power, and then the next time he comes up and he anchors down, so on and so forth. So everything was, at least the 6, 7, 8 games that I got in of him, I didn't see anything consistent. Outside of the fact that, I thought he moved very well, outside of the fact that he tested, that he measured out a lot better than we expected. To me, he still smells like a guard. I think he's, I think he's agile enough. I think he can handle himself in a phone booth, well enough. I don't know if I'd want him out on an island on the left. That's for sure. And that's just me. I'll kick it to you, Kai.
Oh yeah. So I have Fatanu as my OT5. But I just have to be clear. I absolutely love this kid. Like watching his tape, there is a lot of technical issues, right? You have stuff that you need to refine. But I find like, especially with guys like him that are a little bit lighter, he weighed in at 317 is what Washington had him at during the season. Like effort and intensity can like neutralize all of your negative things, right? And he plays with all of that. In my opinion, he's by far the best athlete of the tackle bunch. And I have him as the tackle because like you guys just said, worst case scenario, you kick him aside. I think he has very great prospects inside as well, because I think he's that good of an athlete with the long arms, with the play style. I think he's tailor-made for a West Coast offense. He's tailor-made for that type of system. As a Dolphins fan, I'm hoping that he falls to 21 and he's the guy, because, with Teron Armstead's issues, staying on the field, I think he's a prime prospect to get drafted and play guard next to Teron Armstead. And then, in the event that Teron Armstead goes down, right, or when he retires, you kick a guy like that over. But I'm of the mindset that you have to try this kid at tackle at some point, because athletes like that don't come around very often, especially with that type of build that he is, a little bit shorter at 6'4", but with the long arms, he has almost Joe Alt's length arms, which is a little crazy when you talk about it. And his feet are great. His run blocking ability is a lot better than it gets credit for, especially when they have him out in space. They get him out in space. They move him a lot on screens, just some dual stuff type of run reads where he can get up to the second level. He's great at the second level. He's a finisher. He's a dog. Everything that we talked about with Olu, he's kind of like the opposite of it. He's like, if you could put Fatanu's inside of Olu's body, then you would have like the perfect tackle prospect. But that's how I look at Fatanu. I really like him. And there is some issues to work out, but I think they're technical issues. I can work with technical issues all day. I can't fix stuff like you guys said about, having that dog in you. I can't fix stuff like if he was 6'3" and had 33-inch arms, we can't fix that, what God gave you. Like he has everything else that you want. I can refine the technique and I can get a guy like that. Coaches are the most arrogant people in the world. I say that all the time. There's not a coach in the NFL that doesn't think they can get a guy with that talent and that level of ability and bring the best out of him. So I think 21 to 32 is the range for him. And as a Dolphins fan, I'd be ecstatic if a guy like that fell to the system, which I think most benefits his skill set. and he can help the Dolphins in the run game, second level blocking, and just how fast the ball gets out. A lot of the issues that he has just would be neutralized, and I think that would be a perfect type fit. Even to San Francisco, they could put him next to a Trent Williams. I think that would make sense later in the draft. So that's the range, and that's what I think about him, and that's the scheme that I think he best fits.
Yeah, I think he's absolutely, if he is an outside zone blocking offensive lineman. But this I'll throw back to you, Kai, because I don't know, and I'm asking a former offensive lineman. You get a guy that light, you get a guy who plays on a narrow base. I mean, outside of coaching him out and getting him all there. I mean, you're asking for a recipe for disaster when you're playing, when you're playing against these guys in the NFL that are bigger, stronger, already than you. That narrow base and something like that, I mean, it's going to destroy him. It's gonna definitely hinder what he can do. Yes, I agree with you in movement, in space, in the perimeter, reaching into the second level. He's super athletic, does a good job, but at the point of attack, like, you're asking for him to get, thrown into the backfield.
Yeah, the thing that I talk, and you know what, I don't think that you're wrong here. I'm just saying, I believe that we can fix those things. Those are fixable. You're like, he's a little bit light in the ass. We can put 10, 15 pounds on that kid. He's not going to lose the athleticism that he has. And then in terms of the base, that's a technical issue. That's something that we can fix in the offseason in camp. That's something that we can refine during training camp and in preseason. But over the course of the season, I mean, he's a project. When people are drafting these kids, they normally have a 3 to 4 year window to get it right. So he doesn't have to be a finished project year one is what I'm keeping in mind here, especially with all these guys, really. So I like his prospects of the way he finishes, the way he boxes. He gets his hands on you. He's a guy that mauls. For his little frame, he gets guys on the ground a lot. He finishes guys and drives them outside of the frame of the all 22. It happens pretty frequently with a guy like him. And so I think you're 100% right. Against stronger guys, he can struggle. But this is also why I think the scheme fit is so important. Being in an offense that doesn't ask you to move guys off the ball for 4 quarters of the game. Being in the offense like San Francisco 49ers, the Los Angeles Rams would be an interesting spot for a guy like that, even though they have their offensive line solidified. That's the type of scheme I think
I got what you're saying.
You would be great in. So a lot of that is, and that's like what's so cool about this draft, if you're an offensive line guy, is there's a flavor of the week for everybody. There's a type of guy that fits your system. We haven't even talked about Amarius Mims yet, and I think he has top 5 potential if he was healthy and we had more film. I think he would probably be most people's OT1 if he had at least one season's worth of full film. But with the health prospect, you have to take that into consideration with these guys. Otherwise, he would probably be my OT1 or OT2 behind Fashanu. But there's something for everybody in this class. We haven't even gotten into the Rosengartens and even the guys like from Notre Dame, Blake Fisher. That's day 2 guys that I think can be really good starters down the line.
Yeah. So before we get into those guys, I do want to touch on the other big name that, again, I think there's been a little prospect fatigue and people kind of, what's hyped up on Talasay Fuanga and then kind of just quieted down on him. Again, I think he's another guy that I think he could be a really, really good guard. I don't know how long or how much he's going to be able to last at the tackle, especially as right tackle. Shorter arms, all that stuff. The movement skills laterally are okay. Like, I think he definitely is going to struggle for speed. I watch him struggle for speed. The good thing is, in fairness to him, is that I think him, along with Graham Barton, along with Jackson Powers Johnson, have just like tremendous recovery ability. Like, they can get beat and they recover so well. A lot of it because they're quick hands and they're strong and they can just maintain and get back. But a little too lungy, a little too just kind of off in his pass sets for sure. Oversets, he lunges a little too much. Fuanga as a tackle. Blewett, I know your answer.
Yeah, no. So I'm gonna call him Fuanga until they draft him. And I'll call him Fuanga. It's Fuanga. I can't process that in my brain. So
Tunga Viola. How Tunga Viola doesn't have an N. Same thing with Fuanga.
I'll learn how to pronounce it in 4 days if we actually draft him. But and just really quickly going back to the Fatano thing too, like good fit for the Dolphins, maybe not for the Jets, right? The transition to more power and counter and all that stuff's like flavor of the week type of deal. And you're talking about like developing offensive linemen. You know, down we got Keith Carter, not the best reputation.
All of a sudden, they have like the world's worst offensive line coach. I don't know what it is with Keith Carter and the guys that don't like him, but.
Yeah, so maybe the Jets wouldn't be the best pick for him at 10, but great for the Dolphins later on in the draft. Yeah, so in terms of like, okay, Fatano outside, I think he could succeed there. Fuaga, if I had a gun to my head right now, I'm saying he's going to be the better guard. Now, the problem comes with certain teams, like, are they going to allow him to play guard? Because like Icky was a guy who I liked a couple of years ago, but I said, hey, try him at tackle, but I think he'd be a stud of a guard. He struggled at the NFL level. I don't know if the Panthers have ever even tried to move him inside, but Fuaga, I just don't see the movement skills necessary for tackle at the NFL level. I don't see, the lateral mobility, the change of direction. Like some guys have like that really good, like redirective balance and stuff. I don't see Fuaga having that. You see the low carriage at the outside hand, doesn't really get his hands on guys properly like I always want him to. And there were some reps at like the Senior Bowl, and I wish maybe eventually I get out there with you guys. I would absolutely love to do that. My wife would stab me though, considering that we have a newborn, so I definitely couldn't do it this year. But there were some reps I even saw of him in the Senior Bowl, and it's like he's getting his face crossed, and then he pancakes a guy, but it's like, hey, he just completely disrupted the pocket. So like, yeah, it looks good, it's sexy on Senior Bowl one-on-ones, but like that quarterback now has to scramble out, and hopefully his reads are going to the right or to the left, because if not, Fuaga just kind of blow up your spot. So he has really good power. Like if he's a guard and like a power counter, whatever he's doing on the inside, I think he could be good there. But on an island, isolated as a tackle, I just don't see the necessary movement skills from him.
Yeah, we see it the same way. What about you, Kai?
I mean, I have him as my OT7, so I'm a little bit
lower.
I don't want to say down on him, but I mean, I think he's still a guy that can be a plus contributor fairly early in the NFL. I just agree with you guys a little bit on some of the concerns about him. I go back to the UCLA game, though. I think him and Leatu Latu and the Murphy brothers, who are super underrated if you haven't watched those guys, the edges from UCLA. But he struggles a little bit with the with the speed, like you guys said. But to me, it's interesting. Like, he fights so hard. And like you said, he has such good recoverability. I tend to give him a little bit more bail than most people because, like you said, in the Senior Bowl, I was impressed with a lot of stuff he did in the Senior Bowl, but you're right. Like, those plays do disrupt the pockets. I know we'll have guards set and center set, and so it'll be a little bit different of a line of scrimmage for those guys on defense to work with. But, yeah, I mean, those things matter. So even though he can survive and he can fight and recover, it's still affecting the play. It might not be a sack, but like you said, a pressure or, a hurry that forces the quarterback out of the pocket, that's getting the guy off the field. I mean, that's impactful in the game. So I'm interested to see if he can refine some of that stuff, because I keep going back to it. I don't think the talent or ability is the issue with a lot of the guys. I think it's just a little bit of refinement with technique. I think he's a very jerky mover in his sets. He's not fluid at all in his pass setting. I think that's something that you can teach, though. With better technique, you can get a little bit more fluid movement. Better weight. It might be a hip issue, something that we can fix in the weight room over the course of a year or two, and getting this guy a little bit more, limbered up and loose. So I think he can be a plus starter at right tackle. I think he's a right tackle for sure, though. And I'm not sure that I'm drafting a right tackle with a top 10 pick. So that's my feeling on Fuaga.
Yeah, so you think he's a tackle more so than a guard, or you think it's?
I think he's a combo guy. I think that is something that adds to his value, in my opinion. That I think I can make him a guard, and I think he has tackle ability. So I think a team like the Steelers, everybody's talking about going inside when they just signed the center. I think the guys would be a great pick for the Steelers because he has a little bit of that versatility. The team, especially for teams that have had long injury histories up front, you need a guy that can play guard and tackle for you and be a plus situation there. We saw with Tyler Smith. Tyler Smith played a little bit of guard for the Cowboys, kicked out, played some tackle, and now he's back playing all pro level at guard. I think those are the type of kids that you want to take from the 21 to 32 range, and I think he fits somewhere in there.
Tyler Smith was my guy in that draft class. I mean, he was criminally underrated coming out of Tulsa. That we talk about that dog in him. That's Tyler Smith coming out. But Fuaga, and again, kind of tying this to the Jets, and this is not a player comp, but I see him just like Joe talked about. Like AVT is, I think he's a great. I think he could be a really, really great guard, and he is a really great guard. Where if you need him to bump outside to play tackle, he's good. It's not going to be all world, not going to be that. To me, that's kind of like the mindset I would have if Fuaga was my guy. Yeah, Talisa Fuanga.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe.
I think he's a guy who could survive at tackle, but would thrive at guard. Like that's my read on him. I do see, I guess, opposite of Kai, I do see a little bit of problem with movement with him. I'm not so confident in his movement ability. But yeah, I think him at guard is his best bet. So, whereas a guy like Fatanu, I think you try him at tackle with like the actual hope that he could do it and he can actually thrive there. I just don't see Fuaga ever thriving at tackle, surviving, like you said, Dom, like AVT. Yeah. And I think AVT's an even better. And again, I had to go back and watch AVT's college film, but I thought AVT was a better mover than Fuaga at the collegiate level. And a lot of people,
for sure.
Yeah. And a lot of people compare AVT to Fatanu, but Fatanu is a better mover as well than AVT. I think AVT at the collegiate level was much more technically savvy and consistent than Fatanu, but Fatanu offers the higher athletic upside. But people, and again, Dom, you know what it is, like, oh, AVT could play guard and tackle. Oh, so could he? Oh, that means he's AVT. They're completely different players. Yeah. So, I just think it's a thing where, in terms of thriving, and it depends on the team, right? Like if you're a team who needs both a right tackle and a right guard, and you can kind of let him fail at tackle, then move him into guard, great. But if you're a team who needs a tackle, I wouldn't be so confident in picking Fuaga, at least in the top 10 for the Jets.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, we touched on the guys that I really, really wanted to touch on at the top of this class, but I'm curious. I know one of Kai's guys in this class, and Joe, I don't know if you've done any work on Rosengarten yet, but I got to hear from Kai because, man, he's, for me, was such a tough scout. You watch him, and first off, you talk about being light in the ass. I mean, I think he's barely pushing 300 pounds. He plays NFL nasty. He's got that thing. He's athletic as they come. Like that jump set that he does out there, man. I hate it. I can't stand it. Every time I see it, I cringe. But it works. But you know what? He does it. That jump set, and his trap snatch. I mean, it's legit. I just don't know how it all's going to tie in to the next level. Now, listen. He played left tackle. He protected. Well, I guess Penix was I guess he was a front side protector on Penix. It wasn't blindside protector, being a lefty. But I think he could probably go left and right. I just think he moves sometimes like a baby giraffe for me, like a little bit long, a little bit lanky, kind of like all four limbs are moving different directions at another. I know he's trying to get ahead and be almost at sometimes a little too athletic where it comes back to bite him. Kai, talk to us about Roger Rosengarten, because from the Jets world, if we target, kind of a non-offensive lineman early in the round, this is the guy that a lot of people are honing in on. You talked about Blake Fisher, you talked about Roger Rosengarten, if they're there at the top of the third round, so on and so forth. I would love to hear your take, because I know you're a Rosengarten guy through and through.
Right. Yeah, so it was the thing, I watched a lot of Fatanu during the season, right? I knew who Rosengarten was, and I had watched him a little bit. I had a little bit of 22 tape on him, but man, he just reinvigorated me in the Senior Bowl. I went down there, and I'm watching the one-on-ones, and there's all this, there's this hype for everybody, right? There's Latu there down there. There's the Michigan kids. There's the Booker kid from Kansas. There's just a lot of talent down there, right? And there's a lot of offensive line hype. Fuaga's down there. Guyton's down there. All the guys are down there, right? And then there's this one kid that just keeps popping out during the one-on-one period. I'm like, who is this kid? And I had to go read, the roster again. I'm like, that's Rosengarten, and he looks incredible. I mean, the variety in his sets for a college kid is very rare. That's some high-level stuff, the stuff that he does. And like I said earlier, there's, especially when we're talking about a size discrepancy, right? There's two things that eliminate that. Having some technical proficiency and effort, and he plays with both of those things at the highest of levels. Like I have a respect for it, because it's not a jump set. Like he just runs right at the guy. I've never seen anything like it. He takes one set.
Yeah, he seeks out contact. That's for sure. Like
he literally takes that one set and then just runs at a guy. It's not even a jump set. I've never seen anything like it before, and it works. It never fails him. Like I don't understand it, but I do like the variety. It's something that defensive end now has to think about, right? When we talk about you get vertical set, you're taking a 5-step drop and you have a 50 set, and then next thing you know, 2 reps later, he's literally running at you on a 50 pass drop. Like I've never seen it before. So the comfortability and the confidence to do stuff like that it is a plus for me. And then we talk about the run game. He's a guy that, for his being light in the ass, he moves people off the ball far more than a guy like Olu, and Olu's my number one. Like I've never seen. He's just the weirdest combination of talent and like deficiencies at the same time. But I think that the level of consistency that he plays with is consistent, right? He plays with consistent effort. Fourth quarter, I mean, he's driving guys 10 yards down the field. He's played on the right side, he's played on the left side because Fatami played left side this year. So I don't have any questions about moving him to right or left. Senior Bowl, he took excuse me. I almost let it slip.
All good.
He took
All good.
All right. He took 20 reps, man, in the one-on-one periods. A lot of guys go down there, get a couple reps, sit on their ass for the rest of the day because they're not trying to risk it. That guy went and did every pod period. He was run periods. He was in there every time. Pass blocking, pod periods, he's there. One-on-ones, he's there. Right side, left side. The kid just loves football. He plays hard. He has the arm length. He has the length, and I think he can add 10 solid pounds and to that frame. And he ran 4.8, high 4.8s, low 4.9s, if I'm remembering correctly. So all the athleticism that you want. Rosie Garden is my guy. I think he's going to be successful and shock a lot of people. And I would be shocked if he made it out of the top 55. If he doesn't go in the second round, I'm going to be very surprised there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, take it for what it's worth. It's a grain of salt on the smoke that you get now, but there's a lot of hype, of him even going down at the bottom of the first round of Baltimore or San Francisco, so on and so forth. But again, you got to take that with a grain of salt because who knows what anyone's talking. I definitely think he's a top 60 guy. I'm sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Oh no, sorry, I didn't know if you were pausing there. So that's I don't really know the prospect, but the mindset thing is so huge too, right? And by the way, the only other guy who I've seen at least based on what you're saying, do that running set, whatever the hell that is Billy. Sometimes Billy Turner does that, and it's like, what are you doing, dude? But,
Joe, I'm gonna DM you. I actually clipped out like 6 or 7 plays where he does.
I want to see it
because I said to myself, I was like, what the fuck is he doing?
Yeah,
it looks crazy. It looks crazy. It looks like a ninja. Like he like I said, he kind of runs, he jumps, and he trap snatch, and he's on top of the guy.
Dude. It's incredible.
It's crazy, dude. It's crazy. It's the craziest thing ever.
I want to ask, I want to talk to him. I know one of his old coaches. I'm going to ask if that was planned or is that something that they've ever trained? Because to me, I've never seen that just be drilled or repped in practice. I think he's just going off the fly there. So I'll be interested to find that out. So I'll let you know when I talk to the coach.
Yeah. I definitely want to know because Billy Turner did it. You get into a vertical set and then he would kind of be getting to that contact window. And instead of just splitting the guy, staying patient, running his feet, he would just run at you like he was literally trying to murder you. And Billy Turner obviously is hopefully a lesser player than your guy. If you have the Jets draft, and Billy Turner is obviously not the best NFL tackle, but it's about the mindset too. If you're confident in the mindset, I think that goes a far way. I don't think people really think about the mindset type of deal all the time. Like a guy like we drafted a couple of years ago, Dom, like Bryce Hall is a guy with an elite mindset. He's not the best athlete, but he made it work for himself in the NFL. He's going to be he's a solid role player. And I wish the Jets could have helped him. You have guys like Denzel Mims, all of the talent in the world. You bring in Keelan Cole and Elijah Moore, and the guy blames 2 bad seasons on food poisoning from salmon. It's like, what are we doing here? So the mindset thing is something that we're never really going to be able to understand unless you can talk to, I can talk to the coach of that guy. Do you have connections? But there's so much behind the scenes that it's really, and it's one of the reasons that it's so hard to evaluate prospects is that mentality. Do you get 10 million dropped in your lap? You're like, hey, I don't got to work as hard. Becton, I had problems with some of his mindset. The big bust t-shirt, I am a left tackle, all of that stuff that we saw, Dom. So it's such a large part to the evaluation process. I don't think people really appreciate.
Yeah.
One more thing about Rosie Garden. I think a comp, and I don't know if he's going to play left tackle, but just a physical comp and then a body-wise comp and then a kind of a play style comp as well. I think he reminds me a lot of Taylor Decker. If you can get Taylor Decker years out of Rosengarten and he's a little bit more, imposing in the run game, that's where I think he could max out at. If he can give me 3 or 4 Pro Bowl seasons, that's what I'm thinking about Rosengarten, best case scenario. He has that type of ability and trajectory in the right scenario.
Well, listen, I don't think, and here's the thing I'll say about Rosengarten. I'm confused by him as a prospect. Like I said, some of the stuff he does is just mind blowing, like we talked about. But he does. He's a mean motherfucker. He's nasty. He's a finisher, which is good. I don't know if I see him coming in plug and play. He's going to need some time. He's going to need to definitely get a little bit, put a little bit of weight on, get a little bit more functionally strong. I don't know if he's a guy that I want to, draft to expect him to hop in, year 1 to go.
Right. No, I agree with you. I mean, that's the reason why he's going to go, probably in the 50s as opposed to the 20s with the other guys. I think he does have some stuff he needs to work on, but I think that he's a guy that's going to figure it out. If I'm betting my chips, because a lot of this is a crapshoot, right? But
Yeah.
I'm putting my chips on that kid because he has the length right now. It's not a concern about his length. He's 6'5" with long arms. He has athleticism. He just needs to put some weight on him, and I think the rest of the stuff will work itself out.
Yeah, we said the same thing about Max Mitchell a couple years ago, though, Kai. We said the same thing. He's got the.
To be fair,
He's
I
got
wasn't a Max Mitchell guy.
He's got the length, and he just needs to put on some weight. And then
the difference though is if Kai is saying this guy is nasty, Max Mitchell lacks any type of nasty, and that was one of my problems with some of the mentality of like Joe Douglas's mid-round picks. It's like, listen, I don't want to call a guy who's playing at the college level soft, as I said here downstairs in my house, not having to deal with these guys. But relative to other prospects, Max Mitchell and Carter Warren were like very, very soft players. So it seems like they're a little bit different in that mindset. And that was my problem with those picks. It's like, hey, they're getting beat up by like these random guys and they're not really responding well. So that's a big part of my process, is to see like how aggressive guys are, not necessarily in terms of taking guys to the ground, but like, hey, if this guy beats you that one rep, are you going to come back and beat his ass that next one? Like, do you hate to lose more than you love to win?
Yeah.
So another thing about the Washington kids is, this is the last point, and I'll shut up about it. But they played in an offense where I'll be interested to see the advanced statistics. Right, it probably balances out because of the type of offense they played in. But Michael Penix took a lot of 5-step drops, and he likes to hold the ball, and he likes to hold the ball inside of the pocket. So they had a little bit more, difficult than a lot of guys in college, especially when you look at some of the more gimmicky offenses. And I have no problem with those offenses because score points, you got to score points. I don't care. But Penix holds the ball, and he holds the ball from the pocket, man. So they had to hold their blocks. They had to engage. They had to have more technique, in my opinion, than the rest of the guys in the classes, because simply of the function of the offense. So I think that's something that's going to help them next level, especially if they go to a situation where the ball's coming out a lot faster.
Yeah. 5 to 7 step drop, chuck it up to Odunze. Future jet.
I mean,
well, you better get used to that. You better get used to that Washington offense now with the board down there, right?
Yeah, they're and you know what? I'm okay with it, because one thing about it, that's like, it's so funny people have about Milroe. We can do a whole different show about this. It's like people kind of peg him as a typical like scrambler quarterback, but it's literally the opposite. He holds the ball way too much trying to be the quarterback guy. And if he did play the way people try to peg him, he'd win the Heisman, because he run for 1,200 yards. Like, he doesn't play the way people think he does. So I'm interested to see how the board definitely develops that guy, and how the rest of those linemen, because I think Alabama this year has the best 2 interior guards in the draft, for the 25 draft, with
Really?
Tyler Booker and Jaden Roberts. So I'm excited to see how they meld, because those two guys are big road graders that move people off the ball. And like, if you talk about some dogs, some imposing guys, those are 2 of the nastiest guys I've seen in a long time in college. And I'm interested to see how that melds with the Kalen DeBoer offense in terms of pushing the ball vertically down the field and having to pass it a little bit more.
Well, I'll say this, and not to veer too off topic before we close up. Jalen Milroe looked like he's throwing the ball different in that spring game. He looked like he worked on something. He worked on something for sure. And I don't know if that's DeBoer and his offensive staff that he brought in, or I don't know if it's something that he's doing on his own, but his whole throwing motion looks completely different.
Yes, it's more compact. His feet are a little bit wider. The motion is more compact, and he is getting more torque on the ball, which is crazy because he already had a rocket of an arm. And statistically, he was the second best deep ball passer in college football behind Jayden Daniels in terms of accuracy, average depth of target, all those fancy statistics that we get into sometimes. Jalen Milroe was number 2 behind Jayden Daniels in all those. So if he can take it up another notch and really refine that motion, I think he's one of the more interesting prospects for next year, because it's going to be extremely polarizing.
Yeah. Well, listen, your Alabama takes are as true as they come, but they're also as fanboy as they come. So we got to take it with a grain of salt.
Listen, you're not lying.
Listen, guys, we're at an hour here, and I told you I'd only keep you for 30, 45 minutes, and I could do this all night. I can chop it up with you guys and keep going, but I don't want to keep you. I got some stuff to do. I don't want to keep you guys anymore. I appreciate this. Listen, I had a blast chopping it up. Joe, at Joe RB31 on Twitter, and Kai, it's at Kyron Samuels, right?
Yes, sir.
Guys, if you're not following either of these 2 guys and you want to get some in-depth, in the weed stuff of people who actually put the time in and watch film, up, down, and inside and out, go follow these guys. Anything you guys want to add before we cut out here? Joe, I'll get to you.
I both appreciate you for inviting me and having a great conversation, and I don't appreciate you because now I'm gonna have to go from having a really, really good conversation about offensive linemen to stabbing each other over Brock Bowers on Twitter again. So you kind of like showed me what it could be. This is what conversation should be like. Unfortunately, it's not like that. So I both appreciate you and don't appreciate you, Dom.
Likewise, likewise, Joe. No, that's not true. Kai, give us a couple words, man. What do you got?
No, listen, man. Thank you for having me on. It's good to see you again. Good to talk to you again. Joe, it's very nice to meet you. And
nice to meet you.
I'm interested to see where the Jets go. I mean, you guys are in a pretty serious transitional year. Like, you're pretty much going for it all this year. So I'm really excited. Even though you guys are division foes, I'm excited to see what that team looks like and how they're going to be this season. And again, thank you for just having me on, and I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, listen, guys. Both of these guys do good work. Give them some love. Go check out the Pulling Guard. Go check out Jet X Factor if you're not. Follow them on Twitter. And listen, again, from the bottom of my heart, guys, I know this was a long time coming, and we're pushing, maximum capacity here before draft day. But I'm glad we could chop it up for an hour. This is a lot of fun.
For sure.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't done so, do me a favor. Please like, subscribe, follow, do all that stuff so that the YouTube algorithm likes me and kicks this content out to more of the masses. The more people that get their eyes and hands on this, the better. Leave a comment. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you didn't like. Tell me why Joe's wrong. Tell me why Kai's wrong. It's all good. They're big boys and they can handle that stuff. So until next time, thanks for watching. This is another episode of Draft Dodgers, and we'll catch you soon.